What if the person you trusted with your life became the reason you lost it? Not every monster hides in abandoned buildings. Not every killer wears a mask. Sometimes they wear a smile. Sometimes they sit beside you at dinner. Sometimes they tell you everything will be okay. For years, Blaise Taylor looked like someone destined for success. A respected football coach, a former NFL scout, a man surrounded by opportunity. But behind the public image, prosecutors say another story was unfolding, one involving betrayal, poison, and two women whose lives would end under eerily similar circumstances. This week, that story reached one of its most dramatic chapters. A jury found Blaise Taylor guilty. The judge handed down a sentence that will likely define the rest of his life. But even now, the questions haven't stopped. How did a promising football career end inside a courtroom? What convinced 12 jurors beyond reasonable doubt? And why do investigators believe this case reveals a disturbing pattern rather than a single tragedy? Today, we open another shadow case file. Long before headlines described him as a convicted murderer, Blaise Taylor built a reputation in football. His career included coaching positions at major college programs before eventually working with the Tennessee Titans organization. Friends described him as intelligent, disciplined, ambitious, the type of person who seemed to understand leadership. From the outside, everything appeared normal. But investigators would later argue that appearances were dangerously misleading. Behind closed doors, relationships were becoming increasingly complicated. Those closest to Taylor would eventually become central figures in a criminal investigation, unlike anything the local community expected. Then, everything changed. The prosecution focused on two deaths. The first involved Taylor's girlfriend. Investigators alleged she was poisoned while pregnant. According to prosecutors, she unknowingly consumed substances that placed both her life and her unborn child's life in immediate danger. She later died. So did the unborn child she was carrying. Authorities argued these deaths were not accidental. Instead, they claimed Taylor deliberately administered poison before attempting to portray the situation as a medical emergency. The allegations shocked everyone who had known him. Poisoning cases are already rare. Cases involving intimate partners, even rarer. Investigators began carefully reconstructing every movement, every message, every timeline. What emerged, according to prosecutors, was a picture of careful planning rather than sudden violence. Trials aren't won with emotion, they're won with evidence. Jurors spent days examining testimony from investigators, medical professionals, forensic experts, and witnesses connected to the case. The prosecution argued that the evidence pointed consistently in one direction: medical findings, digital records, witness testimony, behavior before, during, and after the poisoning. Each piece, prosecutors said, supported the conclusion that this was intentional. The defense challenged that narrative. They questioned the prosecution's interpretation of events. They argued investigators reached conclusions that ignored alternative explanations. As with every criminal trial, the burden remained entirely on the prosecution. Beyond reasonable doubt, after hearing all the evidence, the jury reached its decision: guilty. Cases like this remind us that some of the most frightening crimes don't happen in dark alleyways. They happen inside ordinary homes. If you appreciate carefully researched true crime documentaries that separate evidence from speculation, consider subscribing to Shadow Case Files. Your support helps bring these stories to light. Now, let's examine the sentence that closed one chapter while opening another. The courtroom was silent. Families waited. Reporters watched. Then came the sentence: life in prison. Under Tennessee law and the specific convictions in this case, Taylor must serve decades before becoming eligible for parole. For many observers, the sentence represented justice. For others, no prison term could truly compensate for two lives lost. Yet the legal process rarely ends with a verdict. Taylor's attorneys have indicated they intend to pursue an appeal. Appeals do not determine innocence or guilt all over again. Instead, they examine whether legal errors occurred during the trial. That means this story, while significantly changed by the conviction, may not yet be over. Every true crime case leaves behind more than court records. It leaves empty chairs, interrupted futures. Families are forced to measure time by anniversaries instead of celebrations. For many people, the name Blaise Taylor will forever represent one of the most disturbing betrayals imaginable. Not because of celebrity, not because of football, but because trust, once broken, can never truly be repaired. Justice may answer legal questions. It rarely answers emotional ones. How could someone living an ordinary life become the center of such extraordinary allegations? Could warning signs have been missed? And how many similar stories never reach the headlines? Those questions continue long after the courtroom empties. If this documentary made you think, let us know your perspective in the comments. Remember to like this video and subscribe for more carefully researched investigations. Because every case leaves a shadow. Every mystery deserves a voice. This is Shadow Case Files.